Okay, in this video lecture, we're going to talk about culture and change. We're not necessarily going to talk about the steps you need in order to change the culture of an organization, because the culture it's not only different in every organization, it's ingrained differently in other organizations. There's strong cultures, there's weak cultures. So to say here's the steps you need to change a culture would probably be a very, very long lecture video. But we're going to talk about what the culture is, the effect that the culture has on an organization, and then maybe provide some examples of organizations like Goldman Sachs, for example, that have gone through changes and have lost a significant amount of their workforce, maybe 10% of their workforce, but they thought that the changes were necessary, and in order to get their changes, here's some of the things that they did and that they changed about the culture. Again, culture it's one of those fuzzy topics. It's a little ambiguous. We know there's societal cultures, right? And we know we could categorize those societal cultures and say, well, America is this kind of culture, and Eastern countries have this kind of culture. With organizations, it's maybe not as cut and dry, and some would argue that maybe culture is just kind of a fabrication of some sorts. But there are definitely ways that people do things in organization. There are things that people value in organization. You could see it throughout, right? You could see it from the way it's decorated, to the awards, to the pictures that are hanging, to the stories that are told. So there is something there, and again, it could be strong or it could be weak, and it could have a major influence or less of an influence on what goes on in the organization. So sometimes organizational cultural change is necessary. So, organizational culture you could define as, hey, look, this is the way that we do things around here. Is the culture. We work 12-hour days. We eat our lunch at our desk. We always prepare reports at the end of the day and never leave until those reports are done. And we're in early the next morning. That's the way we do things around here. Some of it's formal, some of it's informal. So that's one way to describe culture. The other is it's the shared values, beliefs, and norms that influence the way employees think, feel, and act. So there's an emotional element there, right? There's kind of an attitude, and that's really the definition of an attitude, right? Cognitive, affective, and behavioral. So it's an attitude, and it really does affect the way we think about our organization, the way we view our organization, how much time and energy and effort we want to put into the organization. And factor, not culture. Culture really has. It's important because it shapes the public image of an organization. So if you walk into, you walk into a McDonald's, you walk into a Burger King, you walk into a diner maybe, or something maybe that's a little more upscale, it really does shape the public image. You can see the pictures on the wall, you can see the way the employees are dressed, you can see the cleanliness. It shapes the public image. It influences organizational effectiveness. If I have a positive feelings and emotions toward the organization, I might put a little more effort into work. It provides direction for the company, right? Here is our culture, and here's the way we're going to approach work and the work day and the work that we're doing. And it helps to attract, retain, and motivate employees, especially if the organization has an attractive stance on maybe some societal issues or environmental issues that are attractive to the Gen Zs and other younger generations, where the values are in alignment. And as I said, there's also strong and weak organizational cultures. A strong organizational culture is where the employees, most if not all of the employees, share in those values, in those norms, in those beliefs that the organization has. And as a result, you're going to see more commitment. You're going to see stronger feelings and emotions, versus a weak culture where there's very little agreement as to the core values and beliefs of the organization. And you're going to maybe see a lot more movement in organizations like that, or even organizations where they might say, okay, we need to all get on the same page with culture or change what our existing culture is. So it definitely it can have a positive or a negative effect on the effectiveness of the organization. And we've talked about a lot of these already. The Columbia Space Shuttle disaster, Goldman Sachs, we'll talk a little bit about at the end of this video. Great movie to watch is the Deepwater Horizon. It was a BP British Petroleum drilling rig out, I don't know, 50 miles out into the ocean. And several years ago they were finding that there's large oil reserves out there, and it's very lucrative to get out there and drill. And they would fly shifts in, and then you work whatever it was a week and then fly out. But the culture there at BP at the time was certainly lax. It was let's forego safety, let's forego protocol, let's forego intense scrutiny of what it is we're doing because the profits are so high. So if somebody were to say, hey, look, we're underwater there and we're looking at the structure and it's structurally unsound, we think we should stop, you would have those in positions of power saying, nope, we're gonna keep going, we're gonna keep drilling. So there was really a lack of scrutiny, there was a weak culture there. It wasn't a culture of safety where it should have been. I mean, some organizations, in every organization, safety should be priority one, but it's not really a foremost issue because of the things that we tend to do, versus something like the Deepwater Horizon or deep sea drilling, where safety should be number one and should be ingrained in the culture, and here it wasn't. And if you watch the movie or if you've seen the movie, you know the results. There was a massive explosion. I think it was 5 million gallons of oil was making its way to Louisiana. As this drilling rig exploded, all the oil just leaked into the ocean and was going towards Louisiana, and several people died. I think 11 people were killed and 100 some were injured. And again, you go back and you say, well, what was the first order, second order, third order, things that need to be changed? And one of the big ones here was the culture needs to be changed here, because they're not focused on it. So it has a very big impact on effectiveness. And also, there are other things too that have far bigger implications too, like loss of life or serious injury, widespread economic or environmental damage, which happened here. Damage to reputation and careers. I mean, BP took a big shot on the chin because of that. They were just seen as not caring and unsafe and just driven by profit. Loss of public trust and confidence in the organization, if not the whole sector. Massive fines and misconduct were the result of the Deepwater Horizon too. So, there were a lot of changes, positive changes that were made as a result of that. But the question is, did it need to get there? Did you need to get to that point where we have an explosion, we have loss of life, and we have 5 million gallons of oil now that's going to disrupt an entire community? Certainly not. So culture plays a big part in the way these organizations are run, how they're managed, and maybe what needs to be changed. Change occurs indirectly through changes surrounding structures. So you can't just say, let's go ahead and change the culture. We're going to change the culture. What are we going to do? Well, we're going to do this now. It starts by changing those surrounding structures, the reward systems, the recognition systems. And managers must be seen as modeling the behavior, advocating the behavior, or that loss of credibility undermines the change process. So Goldman Sachs is another example in the book that I think does a great job, where they wanted to change the culture when David Solomon came in and took over as the chief operating officer, and they made a lot of investments in certain areas. They went after certain clients that they didn't go after before, and they cut a lot of the perks that a lot of the traders and the bankers were used to, like private cars and flying first class and bonuses based on how much you made versus, and this is what changed, versus your hiring practices. Are you hiring diversity? Are you looking for are you looking for quality female applicants? And Are you looking for quality minority candidates? And are you integrating? And are you what is the composition of those people that are working for you? Because they should be more reflective of society than just what we're doing right now. And bonuses then were based on that and some other things. And as a result, they lost a lot of their workforce. They lost about 10% of their workforce because they said, we're not going to do this, we're going to go work somewhere else. But that's what you're going to see when you're changing the culture. You're going to see people who like the way it's being done now, and they're going to resist that change. I can assure you that will probably end up leaving after that resistance is not met with, you're just dismissed. They're going to leave, and in return, you're probably going to be bringing in employees that are going to buy into this. Some of the younger generation, younger executives, some female minority candidates, and you're going to end up with, hopefully, with that culture that you want versus what you've been doing all along, which may not be working. So it does change through structures and reward systems and recognition, and management has to buy in too. Managers were used to flying first class, were used to getting cars, and now they weren't having that. But they said, okay, that's the way it is now, and we're fully on board and we buy into this. So that's our discussion on organizational culture and change. Again, we didn't talk too much about what specifically do you need to change the culture, some little bit here in relation to Goldman Sachs. But it's important to understand, there are strong cultures, there are weak cultures, and cultures do have an influence on the effectiveness of the organization. So it's important to recognize quickly when you have a weak culture, and that could lead to not only not only poor financial performance, but also potentially loss of lives or loss of public trust.